I can think of nobody more fitting for the Jazz Jam tribute than Gregg and Lois. The passion and the advocacy and the work and the diligence that they have put in to supporting jazz in this community, it's made an indelible mark without a doubt.
The thing that I think that's so interesting about the two of them together is that they form this perfect alchemy that both of them have influenced each other in a way that's really profound. Jazz Alliance of Mid-Michigan wouldn't have happened without Lois's influence, and wouldn't have taken the form that it did without Gregg's interests.
I moved to the Lansing area in January of 1988. I'm originally from Benton Harbor, and so I have always been a music lover. My grandma was a jazz piano player. Kind of ironic that I ended up marrying a jazz piano player. So when I moved here to Lansing, and I was a single mom, I went to every free outdoor music festival of any kind. And so I went to the Jazz Fest in East Lansing in 2006, and Gregg was one of the sponsors, and I thought he was kind of handsome. I saw he was checking me out too, but he didn't come over and say anything. At the end of the festival, my son Ben, who was 14 at that time, we went up and said thank you to Gregg for being a sponsor, because I really did appreciate that. And like I said, I thought he was handsome. So that's how Gregg and I got together in 2006. And at that time, I really didn't know a lot about jazz. I just have always loved any kind of music that would make me move, because at heart, I'm a dancer.
I grew up in Midland, Michigan. I had a passion for the saxophone, and I wanted to go to Berklee School of Music in Boston. My parents wouldn't fund me. They thought I had more potential than being a musician, I guess. But on the other hand, they raised me in a house full of music, and my dad was an avid jazz fan. I couldn't go to where I wanted to go. I dropped out of Michigan State, and I did travel to New York and did what sort of fulfilled my goal of taking a lot of music and really understanding the music on a bigger scale. So I went to the clubs in New York and sort of lived the life. I came back to Lansing and met my first wife, and we had a couple of kids. And then when things sort of got some breathing room as far as the family, I went to Marshall Music, and I got literally a whole shopping cart full of music books, music theory, jazz theory, composition, whatever I could get my hands on. I just studied like crazy for quite a few years, and I advanced my knowledge in order to write more sophisticated materials. And then my first wife passed, and I needed to be out there, so I was out even more in the jazz scene. And so I met Lois at Summer Solstice Jazz Festival. She just literally walked into my life. I saw her in the dance tent, and I said, well, I sort of like what I'm seeing here. But she was wearing a friendship ring. I said, well, yeah, maybe that's more than a friendship ring. I better just cool it. And unfortunately, she came up afterwards. And then I just asked her right up front, are you available? I cut right to the chase, and she said she was. So we met the next night at the Green Door and danced, and then we connected after that. We've been together ever since.
This is how I knew that Gregg was the one. I did see him checking me out at Summer Solstice Jazz Fest, and Al Cafagna was kind of the MC, and after every performance he would get up to the microphone and say, and thank you to Gregg Hill from Liquid Web for sponsoring, this year's Summer Solstice Jazz Festival. So when we went up to say thank you, which we did, I said I was going to ask you to dance, but then I chickened out. And he said, I would have danced with you in a minute. And then he said, are you available? And I said, yeah. And so we both started reaching like in our purse and our pockets and stuff for a pen and paper. And Ben takes his cell phone out of his pocket and just rolls his eyes and said, oh God, what's your number? And so he took Gregg's number. We got in the car. And Ben said, you think he's sexy, don't you, Mom? And I said, yeah, I kind of do.
Summer Solstice Jazz Festival, that was a magical moment, because that really changed my life.
We first Met Gregg when we were doing a regular gig at the Cappuccino Cafe. You get a wonderful group in there, and Gregg started showing up regularly.
You know, we didn't know at the time that he was a wonderful writer and played piano as well, but he would be there every week supporting us. And always at the end, he would come and help us wrap up cables. And
Oh, yeah.
so we sort of became friends through that initially.
Absolutely. And that was the introduction to Gregg.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. None of us get through life unscathed. We all go through dark times and light times. And Gregg went through some dark times. He would still show up, but he was obviously very sad. And then one day, he sort of burst through the door, like glowing. And obviously, he had just met Lois. And his life completely changed after that.
Gregg actually used to take piano lessons with me, and it was before he met Lois. And he would come to the Cappuccino Cafe to hear my group. And one time, he showed up with this woman. And his face was just beaming. I mean, it was just so obvious. These two were just meant for each other. And he introduced me to Lois, and that's how I met Lois.
I've known Lois because we grew up together, and we both went to Lafayette Elementary School. When I came here and met Gregg, I was just blown away because I think it was a perfect match made in heaven. And you can just tell them, like, when they look at each other, they look like high school kids.
After the crash in 2008, people were despondent. The clubs were not hiring or closing even, so it was pretty bleak. So I said, why don't we band together?
JAMM was started for the working musicians. It all melded together because we saw a need. We said, well, I wonder what would happen if we got all our friends together, promoters, musicians, people who just are music lovers, and get them together to see what would happen if we just started talking about possibilities. Gregg and I said, you know, I wonder what we could do. So it was just this side of our condo. We didn't own the other side, the performance space yet. And I think there were more like 30 people here. Talk about players. There were some big players in the room.
My first memories of Gregg and Lois really is at an organizational meeting. We were meeting to form a new jazz club. Lois showed her organizational skills right up front and made it evident that she was convinced, and she convinced us, that we really needed to organize better than we were.
Were we going to be an association? Were we going to be a society? We came up with the Jazz Alliance, connotes bringing other folks in. That's really been extremely important.
They inspire people to, step up. And both Gregg and Lois are two people that'll go, come on, get up, help us over here.
So we decided in that room in September of 2009, we had been married for 1 month. We got married in August of 2009. By January of 2010, we had our first tribute. It was at Perspective 2, P2, and it was to Sandy Eisenson, who was the original Jazz Society founder here in mid-Michigan. And a lot of the people who are in JAMM were members of that Jazz Society. So we had a lot of really good, experienced jazz lovers and jazz musicians in that room. And to put together that tribute in 3.5 months and have 150 people at P2, that was something, you know? And then we just kept growing from there. This is tribute number 16, and we're the 16th honorees, and it's 2025, so that's pretty cool.
Lois gets so much of the credit here. I'm good at finance and stuff like that. I'm not much of an organization man to speak of. So So if she wouldn't have come into my life and we would have been sitting around in 2009, 2008, we'd still be sitting around here saying, what are we going to do next? Because she's got what I don't got. We met a need. The need was there, and we just happened to be a couple people that were willing to push things forward a little bit. You know, there's a lot of credit out there for JAMM and what made JAMM. There's a lot of talent, a lot of great ideas came in, and a lot of great people.
Well, you know, I've known Gregg and Lois for a few years now, at least 22 years, because I used to do shows at the Creole Gallery, and I would see both of them separate because I don't think they were together yet. Oftentimes, I get credit for being this person that did so much for jazz in Lansing, but I always tell people it was a community effort. And without them, none of this would have gotten off the ground. Lois is a really good organizer in terms of getting the community to really be focused on jazz through JAMM and the Summer Solstice Jazz Festival. That's when I first got to know Lois. She's a force of nature, strong-willed individual, very passionate about what she believes in. Gregg is a little more soft-spoken, but he's not really soft-spoken. But he is really passionate about what he believes and likes and what he doesn't like, and has been so supportive of so many things, musicians, creating recording projects for the community, and together they're a power couple.
They're avid in their support of jazz and the arts, and not just contribute in a financial way, but they're there. They have presence. You see them listening to the bands. They're out there on the dance floor dancing. It's pretty cool, and that's what we need more of in this community.
They always had so much fun. I have so many pictures of them dancing, and they really know how to dance, and they know how to enjoy each other when they're dancing. It's just delightful to see.
When it comes to Lois and Gregg as the real foundation of JAMM, it might seem like a big word, but I do think legacy really encapsulates what they've done and what they've created and what they've continued to commit themselves to, and invite so many of us into their world. And they are the real deal.
For example, they put a lot of their own money into supporting jazz programs at MSU, and also local jazz clubs that were booking live musicians. One of the most notable ones was Jazz Tuesdays at Mort's.
Hi, my name is Jeff Schaup. Most people probably know me most for a long-running Tuesday night jazz series at Moriarty's Pub since 2014. I've seen the things that JAMM does in action in the persons of guys like Cliff Metcalf, who I first met when he was still in his teens and he was part of the JAMM groups, and watching his star rise over the last 10 years. It's great to see young musicians doing what he's doing, and JAMM was there to support him right from his teens.
I head up the JAMM scholarship group. I first met Gregg and Lois. First time was through Betty Baxter. We went to a Freddie Cole concert. A few years later, they kind of got me involved in JAMM. They asked me to mentor some of the kids coming up. I got into that, and I've been doing it for probably 10 years now. If you want something done, you get to Gregg and Lois. They'll make sure it happens.
Gregg and Lois are probably the two most generous people that I know. For me personally, they've done so much. Gregg and Lois have sponsored my jazz series since 2014. I'm also honored to say that I've recently joined the Gregg Hill trio, where Gregg is actually wanting to perform his tunes himself. So I've been working with him and his son So look out, because there's going to be some performances coming not too far in the future.
Once I discovered the piano, then I figured, well, I can play 12 notes at a time. The piano just opened up a whole panorama of opportunities. So I just started writing stuff right away. And in 2013, actually, Eldon Kelly came into my life as I decided I need to get this stuff on paper. I'm going to start forgetting. I had 60 tunes that were just bouncing around in my head. So I hired Eldon and we started transcribing stuff. Well, then Lynn Brown came into the scene, and we got him in the form of a book, a sampler book. We passed that around to all the local musicians. Then we put an actual introspection in the first book, 40 tunes, and then I started giving it to the Rodney Whittacres of the world, and he's the one that actually bid on it. He said, you know, I'd like to maybe get the professors to do some of this stuff. And of course that floored me, because he was up here in the world and I was a total unknown at that point. But he actually loved the material, so we've put together 4 albums. They've all done really well.
As a leader, I've done 4 projects. I'm holding 3 in my hand now. The first one we did was called Common Ground, this one here. And then we did one during the pandemic called Outrospection. There's some tunes that really touch me on here. I think the title tune, Outrospection, is my favorite tune. And Michael Dees is killing on here. It made me cry. And I listened to Outrospection every day during the pandemic. Then Oasis is a fun CD and beautiful. And Gregg let me put a tune on here that I wrote called Blues for Gregg. So this was a great CD as well. And I wanted to do that as a tribute to him. These are some beautiful works of art that I got to do with him and to tell his story. That's really what it's about. Me wanting to be involved in playing his music really had more to do with friendship than anything.
My love of music just propelled the whole process. Got my own label, Cold Plunge, and I used Origin Records in Seattle for the wide releases. And I've been writing material now for 41 years. So I have a body of work. I have 18 albums out now, 5 books, another book on the way, another 10 albums planned, and another 5 albums penciled in after that. Critics are pretty friendly these days, and I even got a downbeat write-up, so I sort of crossed the goal line there, and I'm not sure what's next. There's all sorts of possibilities of where this stuff might get picked up and who might pick it up. The legacy is try to write good material and hope that people like it and hope that it sticks. That's it.
My legacy with JAMM, I suppose it depends on who you talk to. I think some people might say I'm kind of a boss, you know, and that's okay, because Sonny Wilkinson told me one time, she said, you know, jazz people are going to act like they don't want you to tell them what to do, but we really need someone to tell us what to do. So I guess my legacy might be that I am a big picture thinker, and with all those people sitting in the room, I thought we could really have something that would be attractive to draw lots of people together. The idea of honoring people who have made a significant contribution to jazz in mid-Michigan every year, giving a scholarship every year to a kid who was interested in studying jazz. I guess maybe my legacy would be that I could hold all of that information and see it. I saw it in 2009. And I could imagine that it would just continue to grow.
I would like to thank Gregg and Lois for opening the eyes of the Mid-Michigan community for jazz. We've had people come up to the stage and say they never understood jazz before until they were able to hear it live.
It's a great pleasure now to see that Gregg and Lois are being acknowledged as tributees, and it's long overdue, and Just so thankful for everything that they've contributed financially, supporting us in an ongoing way. Moral support, encouragement, love, even through some dark times, they stuck with it and have made sure that we've rolled forward.
It's been incredible knowing them both, and they so deserve an award for everything they've done.
So here's to you, Gregg and Lois. Congratulations on this wonderful honor. Congratulations to you, lovelies. You are the best, the very best. We got should I go okay, okay. Congratulations, you guys.